Aloha. Aloha. E como mai. Welcome to this initial launch of ULU. If everyone could just ensure before we begin that everyone is muted. Yes, everyone just take a moment to make sure that you're muted. I know sometimes, especially when you're on your phone, right? When you tune in on your phone, you can't see the mic, so you have no idea that you're not muted and everyone can hear everything you're saying. I am so honored and grateful to share the story of Ulu with all of you. And right off the bat, I just want to share, I come from a culture that did not have a written language. And so a lot of the traditions and the lore of my culture, and this is not just Hawaiian culture, this is also Mu culture. Some would call that Lemuria. Because there's no written language, we don't have a lot of documentation unless unless in the Hawaiian culture you know the chants or if you know how to read the spinal cord. And so when people ask me, can you reference ways that I could remember or learn Ulu, it's very difficult for me to do that because I can't send you a link, right, to some sort of journal or document or book, right? My response to you is, do you know the chants or do you know how to read your spinal cord? And so the objective of what we will all play with is coming into what does that mean for me to read the spinal cord? That's what Ulu is all about. And thus you will begin to extract your own database rather than rely on the information, the data of the exterior conditions to determine who you are and what you're meant to be. Right? We're we're coming out of a world of academia. And academia has been the status quo. And to a large extent, academia has transferred as imitation culture. When you can retrieve your own database, right, your own Wikipedia, suddenly the world and everything of the world is going to change drastically for you. You know that saying, I want to belong? You're finally going to know what that means to belong as determined by you. As is the protocol in the Hawaiian culture, I have my kumu, Ikemanu, Bradford Ikemanu Lum with us. And Ikemanu consistently show up from time to time in our ceremonies, either just for his presence. That is part of the protocol of my culture. You must have an elder present, but also to drop some of his ike, his knowledge, right? And so we are so blessed to have Ike Lum to really launch this voyage that we're all going to be embarking on in a traditional way by way of pule and chant. Bradford Ike Lam, I love you completely. I'm so grateful to you. Aloha.
Aloha, everyone. Aloha ma, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here and sit with you this morning. It's morning time for us here in Hawaii. I know there's other people around the world looking in. But for us, it's morning. And before I start this chant, I want to make sure that we're centered. Yeah. So let's center ourselves, turn off all everything that you have and have focus on Keone and Kapua Hinano. And let's focus before we start. So I am the start. I really want us to focus on our breath and what we're doing. I know you're adjusting and it's like, okay, Kumu said I gotta do this. So let's adjust. Let's adjust and be one with yourself and one with us. So we're going to take a few breaths before we start. So uh, Hanu is breathe in and Ha, breathe out. So Hanu, Ha, Hanu, Ha. Last one, Hanu, Ha. Eulu. Eulu, eulu. Inyo ke aku ulu kane me kanaloa a e imi inoho I ko kuahu ia ka vai he vai ola He ola no aloha e ulu. Grow, grow in the multitude of gods. Grow with respect to the forest and the sea. Grow with the ohia, loa, and the ie. Inhabit your place, O God. Water, the water of life, life forever. Ola, ola, ola e ulu. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Thank you so much, Kumu Ike Manu, for blessing and blessing this maiden voyage of Ulu. It took me many years to come to the place that I am now, and also I attribute this to Ike Manu's encouragement. One side of the Hawaiian culture, like many other indigenous cultures, is that we live in a secrecy. And secrecy has been a way for us to ensure that our traditions do not become corrupted. But there was something in me that said this story of Ulu is so profound for humanity at this time right now, especially in the interest of what we come to know as transhumanism, that I felt it's time for me to share. And one part of this hesitation has been to share outside of the bloodlines of the Hawaiian people. The other hesitation is to share in a platform such as Zoom, which has never really been done before and which is not altogether encouraged. But I also am aware that what my grandmother, Kawiki Onalani, and the female elders that surrounded her transferred to me, that is not a possession that needs to be shared. And not just with my own kin of my bloodline, of the people of my island, of the people of Polynesia, but everyone. Aloha itself is not a possession. It must be shared. And when we invigorate the individuals to remember their own access to things like aloha and ulu, we trust that these individuals, such as yourself, will know exactly what to do with it. That's how we come into mutual admiration and respect with one another again. And this will truly be the antidote of war and war culture. And so it took me years to come to this point where like, oh, I'm going to do it. Here we are. And luckily for me, I shouldn't say luckily, and as is the flow of how it has presented itself, I have a lot of people who are supporting me. I have a lot of people who do not support me, but I have a whole lot of people who are willing to observe me. And I really appreciate that. And I think that just is the most wonderful thing. And hopefully in your observation of me and my co-facilitator throughout our 5 months together, Kapua Hinano Kauikalai and Bradford Ikimanu Lum, we will perhaps transfer within you the memory and then also the courage for you to begin to share and become exposed and to become a point of transference for us to truly connect once again outside of the plagiarism of academia. I actually would love to bring in my co-facilitator for the next 5 months, a dear friend of mine, also someone who is of the original bloodlines of Hawaii. And so within that genetic code, there is authority to which she speaks into on Ulu and the many other things that comes from the piko that is Hawaii, ko Hawaii Pai'aina. Kapuhinanu kau ikalai. Aloha, my tita. Please introduce yourself to your lahui.
Ui, aloha no. Kino et maroko a la'a. Mm, so honored to be here with all of you. My name is Kapua Hinano Kawikala'i, and when you ka'awale my name, Kapua Hinano is the Hinano flower that's placed in serenity and in this calmness. And as I sit before you in my exposure in this next chapter, I humbly come to you as a student, but also as someone who is willing to hold space and to share my stories as I embark on my journey in remembrance of who I am, to tap into my iwiwai, my iwikuomo'o, and the stories that have been told through time within my lineage. um, with Keone, he talks about how his olihelu, his mo'oku'auhau, wasn't severed and his stories live on. But for my situation, my tutu was raised in an era where she couldn't speak her language, where it was kapu to do hula and lua and all of their different traditions. And so I am a byproduct of that disconnect that happened, but also the privilege as well, right? So I am that contrast between the West and the preservation of the Hawaiian culture. And so I feel as a byproduct, I have a right, if not more of a right, to perpetuate Hawaiian culture. My tutu wahine is full Hawaiian. My tutu kane is, my grandfather is full Ukrainian. So I have this dualistic contrast within me that I feel within my remembrance. There's so much within me that wants to be shared. And so because I'm with Keoni in this time and his guidance, remembering has become easier and more transferable and more integrated. And so I'm truly, truly just honored to be here within my own remembrance and to inspire others within their own. So mahalo nui, aloha ma.
Mahalo, kapua hinano kauikalai, a wonderful woman that you will get to know quite well in the next 5 months. Not just someone that I work with professionally, but someone that I just love spending time with because the vibrancy that exudes from Kopua Hinano it's so real and so authentic. And so it's going to be such a treat for all of us to be reminded and reoriented into playfulness of this as well. Sometimes coming into archaic memory, cosmic memory can be really disruptive for many of us, because it's going to challenge the identity of what you've been told. And always being reoriented by way of playfulness and the enjoyment is going to be so important because, that to which we come into recognition and rememory of also gets to be as approachable as possible so that we constantly have that consent, right? And part of what Kopua Hinano is very versed in and in some of the ceremonies that are to follow today will be unlocking the Iwikuomo, the spinal cord. Many of us, because the world has been translated as such a violent place, a dangerous place, even unconsciously, we're very locked, right? And so with the assistance of ULU and a lot of the traditions that we will share with you, we're going to unlock the spinal cord. And we don't just leave it unlocked, right? That's incomplete. From the unlocking, then we plug in. That's where you come into Akasha. You're going to plug in. We're going to fill these spaces with your cosmic memory. And then it's still incomplete. And then from the plugging in, we are going to ground it. Ground it. Otherwise, we are going to be experiencing that in dissociation. If we experience that in dissociation, we are incapable of transferring that with others and interacting with others. Why human beings are so social and meant to be so social is because we need to transfer data and information with one another. If we exist in dissociation, we're not capable of doing that. We're going to unlock, we're going to plug in, and we're going to ground it. Yeah. Before I go any further, I have two protocols that I will honor. One, I will bring in my kupuna. I bring in my kin. And there's a tradition the way that I do this, and I'm going to explain this to you so you know what I'm doing because I'm likely going to be doing it every single time that we meet in live ceremony. You're like, what is this guy doing? I call in 7 contemporaries and 7 founders, the names of 7 contemporaries and 7 founders of my lineage. I will say their name after the word ua. Now, if you are versed in Hawaiian language, ua is commonly followed after a name. The reason why I say ua before the name is because I'm creating a verb of my ancestor, meaning I'm bringing them to life right now. I'm calling in my kupuna. And when I say call in, I mean the invigoration of the electricity of who and what they are within me right now. And I will do that right now. And, I feel it's responsible for me to also share that as I do this, I will invite you. I'm aware, I have access to 1017 generations. Part of the reason why I'm so vocal about my lineage and the teachings of my lineage, because I'm aware that many people do not have access to 1017 generations. But for you to also allow yourself to be invigorated by those, whether they be family members, individuals, that can empower you. How can you feel supported right now? Allow yourself to be locatable to that which will support you. And so as I call in my kupuna, I will invite you in your own ceremony. How can you become locatable for that to which nourishes and supports you? Ua ke oni, ua ka apa o ka lani, ua e lia, ua ka apa o ka lani mahi ai, ua na ho'opi I hau, ka maka ko huki lani, lono hiwa kaula. Ua moe ke ahi lili noi, ke ahi ena ena. Ua vivi hoi va'a. Ua ordashe. Ua uru alat. Ua pa ipsi. Ua dharma ikshe. Ua lauda. Ua ikshfahan. Ua mahat. Aloha ma. Aloha ma. Aloha ma. That last name that I uttered is Mahat. Mahat literally means total oracle. That is what we consider the founder of my lineage. His name is Mahat. Mahaka, as we would say in the modern Hawaiian language, and Mahat, who is 1016 generations from me, I'm the 1017th, is the figure and the relative who resurrected the storytelling of the lineage. Because in 18,000 BC, which is 1017 generations from here, that's not the beginning of humanity. So Mahat is not the founder of humanity. Mahat happens to be the relative who resurrected our ability to story tell, which tells us that prior to 18,000 BC, there was a cataclysm. And the cataclysm was so severe that it took thousands, perhaps tens, perhaps hundreds of thousands of years for humanity to recover, which meant that within that timeline, there was no room to storytell. Humanity was in absolute survival. 18,000 BC, we have a relative who came into recovery. He recovered. And in the recovery, began to document and archive our story again. The story of Ulu comes directly from Mahat. We have something in the Hawaiian culture called the Olihelu, and Kapua Hinano mentioned it. Olihelu is a genealogical chant. Every Hawaiian has an Olihelu. Whether or not every Hawaiian remembers the Olihelu, that's more accurate. Every Hawaiian has an Olihelu. Remember, Hawaiians, Mu, we did not have a written language. This is how we documented. Genealogical chant. When I do the genealogical chant, by the way, it takes 10 days, you guys. 10 days to chant. When we go all the way back to Mahat, the Olihelu talks about every generation, characteristics and qualities of the generations, including stars, so we can actually time it, because it will talk about stars, okay? One thing that comes up in the Olihelu of Mahat is that it was a time of the A'ama, A'ama, or the time of the crab, which likely tells us, one, that it was the time the northern pole star was Alpha Cephei, and then also it was likely in the age of Cancer. And so by the way that they documented the placement of the stars, we can actually put time on it. And so when we go to Mahat and the characteristics, we're like, it's 18,000 BCE. We do this with every single generation, including characteristics of that generation. Mahat, one of the first things he mentions is Aloha Ma, self-reflective love. And Ulu. Mahat resurrected the importance, and that is the way it is described, you guys. The importance of Ulu. And I'm going to share with you today the story of Ulu and why it is so important, especially right now. We are on the verge of a holographic and synthetic world. That is a choice point. We are offered free will. That is a choice point. There's a bifurcation that's happening right now. And another reason why Ulu and why I'm doing this and why I'm like, it's got to be free because it needs to be accessible to everyone is because we are literally at a bifurcation, synthetic world, and all the comforts. Do you hear what I just said? All the comforts of a synthetic world or the organic and what it truly means to be organic. That's the bifurcation. Ulu is going to help orient us into the miracle that is the organic. One thing that I want to also honor, and this is that second protocol that I was sharing that I would really love to honor, is we all must gather together, right? There may be a splintering that's happening right now. And of course, right, we're individuals. We're individuals, right? So let's create a space where we can all come together and gather while still remaining an individual, but that individuality is not going to be so threatening. Let's gather, all right? And we do this by the tradition known as ku like, which is the ancient Mu greeting. Ku like means to stand tall, and we're referring to the iwi kuamo'o, the spinal cord. We're going to consolidate within the spinal cord, all right? All the energetics. The first thing that we all may do in Kulike is we may all choose to land. Just land. If you have difficulty landing, it is likely because you feel unsafe and insecure. Okay, here's a way that we can resolve that. Look around your immediate environment right now. Look around. Is your life in imminent danger? Mine's not. I may have discomfort. I may have anxiety. I may feel inconvenience somehow. There may be a projection of what I may need to prepare for or be afraid of, any of that. But is that actually actualized in my immediate environment right now? No, no. Come into that iwi kuomo'o. There should be no reason for you to be distracted. Come into the iwi kuomo'o, land, land. You are safe and secure in this very moment, despite the discomforts and inconveniences of living in a world of contrast. We will cope. We are coping. When I feel into landing, I am removing myself of fixations of a past and cravings for a future. I deem this current moment sufficient. For me, there's nothing more interesting than this current moment. At my huelo, my tailbone, I feel this very generous tug, this tug connecting me to the iron crystal core, to the inner earth waters. I remember that my relationship with this planet and with the inner earth waters is not a punishment, nor is it an imprisonment. I remember that this all has been designed in mutual consent. And I and you and all of we are the engineers. I choose to land. Only in this landing can we make contact with two very important energy centers. I'll ask that we lift our right hand. In lifting our right hand, we are in recognition of our internal masculine. We call this the uhane. Let's restore the uhane to its rightful throne, that of the pu'uvai or the heart space. Let's place that right hand over our heart. Let's you and I take a deep breath in through the nose and hold. Holding this breath, applying this oxygen in the pu'uvai. Let's be generous with our internal masculine, invigorating with oxygen, and exhale through the mouth. In this exhalation, feeling the relaxation of the internal masculine, removed of competition, comparisons, urgency, and belligerency, restored as the hero. Here in the pu'uvai, I offer a mantra of our hero. Pa vale pu'uvai. I open my heart wider. Mahalo. Uhane. I love you. Keeping our right hand over our pu'uvai. Let's now make contact with our internal feminine, the unihipili. Let's lift our left hand. Let's restore the unihipili to its rightful throne, that of the na'o, or the sacral. Let's place that left hand over our sacral. Let's you and I take a deep breath in through the nose and hold. Holding this breath, applying this oxygen in the na'o. Let's fill this chamber with oxygen. Let's be generous with our internal feminine. Sip one more breath. And exhale through the mouth. In this exhalation, feeling the proliferation of the internal feminine, removed of condemnation, censorship, neglect, restored as the leader. Here in the na'o, I offer a mantra of our leader. Uamalu. I am safe. I decide. Mahalo. Unihipili. I love you. And now that our hands are in the proper position known as kulike, a moment to integrate this right relation between the noun and the verb, the hero and the leader, the dream and the action. Lahui, we honor this kulike by uttering 3 times. Aloha ma, aloha ma, aloha ma. There you are. There you are. Now we gather. Mahalo. Thank you. Yeah, this human experience, this human experiment, like, what a trip, right? Like, what? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard you, Sabina. And what ULU does, and one of the things that ULU accomplishes is that it allows us to come into this phenomenon called form. I would say like the spirit and the mechanics of ULU has three, I would say like main qualities. One is for us to acclimate into what it means to be in the physical. In other words, materialization. And I want to focus on that for one moment because this is where I lose a lot of people. Because for some reason, the material is somehow bad. And I've worked in the spiritual community since 2017, and the amount of people who want to bypass physicality, it's profane. I'm just going to be very forward. Because there's something that all of us as human beings, we get to accomplish. It's part of the experiment of being in the physical, and it's something known as spiritualization. Spiritualization cannot happen until there's first a materialization. And so one of the qualities of Ulu is for us to acclimate ourselves into a world of material. You and I, before the time of the human, were light beings. And in our consent and agreement to experience this experiment called the human event, the organic event, we also consented to this thing called the material. And for us to acclimate ourselves into the material is so important. Once that is accomplished, then we are allowed, or we have, I would say, we're compatible for the spiritualization. Now, in the formation of the material of you and I as human beings, we have the two H's. The two H's. One H is heart. The other is hyoid. Hyoid. So these are the first two things that are created or assembled in the point of our materialization in our mother's womb. The heart and the hyoid bone. Now, I'm going to get a little provocative here, okay? Because the heart is the vortex of you and I. The transition or the hulla is sudden spontaneous black hole technology. The shell of us will remain and it will decompose. It'll decay. That's part of being organic. But the manna of us, the life force of us, the miraculous electrical voltage of us will be sucked into the sudden spontaneous black hole technology that is the heart. The heart is a vortex. There's something that counters the heart. Otherwise, we would never materialize because we would simply vanish. It's the hyoid bone. Did you guys know that the hyoid bone is the first bone to appear when we're a fetus? Yeah. The hyoid can be seen as the very crown, and pun intended, the very crown of our cervical vertebrae. In the cervical vertebrae, we have the C1, which is atlas, and then we have C2, which is axis, AXIS, right? But that to which informs that vertebrae, and then everything else to follow is the hyoid. Now, what's so interesting is I'm going to have to backtrack a little bit. We categorize the spinal cord, the iwi kuo mo'o, in three parts. Okay. So the word iwi kuo mo'o literally means dragon bone of succession. Dragon bone of succession. I'm not going to give too much definition to that right now because I'm going to invite you to begin to receive that poetry and then make translations for yourself. But even if we take that word succession, right, there's stacking that's happening. And then when we feel into the iwi kuo mo'o, the spinal cord is the akasha, right? There's a stacking, there's timelines even. There's dimensions we're coming into perception of. But not going to give too much definition. You are just as versed as I am. Go into the poetry of that and begin to explore. Dragon bone of succession. They are in three different segments, just like the Dantians. And the upper region, or the cervical vertebrae, what we call the sacred seven. There are 7 vertebrae in the cervical vertebrae, the sacred 7. This is representative of our holistic self. Androgyny, energetic androgyny. That hyoid begins to inform the cervical to even exist. It gives instructions for the vertebrae to begin to assemble itself. And notice that it begins in androgyny. It's very important. Then it assembles itself into what we call the thoracic vertebrae, okay? This is the holy 12. There's 12 vertebrae within the thoracic, and this is called uhane. Uhane. Uhane is our internal masculine. I'm a gendered male, but I'm 100% masculine and I'm 100% feminine. My sex does not determine my energetic makeup. You and I, we live in a culture where we are told and even sometimes mandated to favor based upon our gender or sex. That is where the great disruption has begun, which severed us of the holistic self, or the awareness and recognition of the holistic self, which then allows us to resource the holistic self. Thoracic, no matter what gender or sex you are also 100% masculine. That thoracic, the heart space, that's why in Kulike we say, Pa'avale pu'uvai, open the heart wider. And then it slowly begins to inform all the way to the sacred 14, which is the lumbar, sacral, and coccyx. That's all feminine. That's all our internal feminine energetics right there. Here's what's so fascinating to me is that at the point of spiritualization, because this is all being materialized, right? Material. At the point of spiritualization, we're doing what we call in the culture the makdas, or the huli hoi, the epic reversal. Now we're starting with the feminine, then going to the masculine, and then into androgyny. So we're doing a complete reversal at the point of spiritualization. And so when many of us are engaged in the interest and the conversation about the spiritual and spiritualization, but you are completely bypassing the process of the materialization, the consequence of that is something known as reincarnation. And when a lot of people speak about reincarnation and they talk about all their past lives, honestly, my response to you is, and you're okay with that? You're okay with repeating over and over and over again? That tells me that something's incomplete. You're not completing something. And so in the culture today, right, we even glamorize past lives, which for me, because I've done my own investigation with this, like, why is this being glamorized? Well, also humanity, we have this fascination with eternal life. One of the greatest ways to manipulate an idea of eternal life is I've had past lives. I've always been here and I'll always be here forever and ever. Yeah, you're trying to create eternal life. And so part of the process, right, of spiritualizing is to also release yourself of the physical, of the material. But many of us are not versed with being able to do that because you're not even versed in the material. That's why it's so easily bypassed. It's not something you have fluency of. And so part of our process of ULU is also coming into sometimes, you guys, I'm going to be honest with you, the density of the material. Is it uncomfortable? Yup. Yup. It's going to be uncomfortable. It would be irresponsible of me to say, like, no, it's all going to be, pleasant. And the visions that you're going to have are all going to be great. And your life is going to change instantaneously. What will likely happen is a lot of the distractions are going to present themselves to you. Happened to me with ULU. And this is a good moment for me to remind you that in this whole journey of ULU, you will always be able to show up in your own consent. If at any moment this is too much for you, any moment this is too uncomfortable, I will invite you to disengage. Disengage, right? You will always be held in consent here. Always, always. That's the primary law of the feminine. It's consent. Primary law of the masculine is do no harm. You can only do no harm when you honor the feminine law of consent. If you do not consent, you may disengage. Okay? Because I'm not going to sugarcoat this, especially people that I work with ULU. Things are going to present themselves, right? That are going to challenge your identity. It's going to challenge your identity. It's going to suck. But that's momentary, right? Because that which comes from that like crappy stage is like ultimate liberation, where I'm present, but I'm also like allowing myself to be as vibrant as I choose to be because that's who I really am. It's almost kind of silly that I have to share that. Right? We are a culture that is so fascinated with censorship. So fascinated. Either because other people make me feel uncomfortable or the things that I say, oh, it's going to make other people feel uncomfortable. I have to censor myself. We're pathological liars. Is there any like wonder why we don't trust one another? Pathological liars. And this is one example of what may arise in your process of ULU. I have been behaving as a pathological liar. Fuck, shit. I don't like that awareness because I feel less than. I feel broken. I feel like I don't deserve this and that. Okay, so the process will be very enlivening in so many different ways. But just remember, maybe hold on to that word, right? Enlivening. Come to life. Come to life within the material realm so that you have the authority to spiritualize. And this thing called reincarnation is a vestige of the past, where we are not supporting one another in reincarnation because we are fluent in the process of materialization and spiritualization. So that hyoid, that's the first bone. And you know what's so cool about the hyoid? It's the only bone in the human body that's not connected to another bone. And the reason being, and this is what my kupuna shared with me, okay, is because the heart, which is that vortex, it needs something to counter that vortex. And so we can feel that the hyoid, okay, so just for a moment, just so you can come into your body, just stick your tongue out. Feel that tension that happens right here at the jaw, back of the jaw. That's the hyoid. Fun fact. You are all aware of the haka, right? What do they do in the haka? Bah! Bah! You know, that's what they're doing, right? They're connecting to the hyoid. That action is the hyoid. And so flex that, feel that, come into recognition of the hyoid, because it is what Michael Puna shared with me. And this is what I feel is true, okay? It's the only stable thing in our body. The only. You know, the bones too, right? It's the calcium phosphate, right? It's a crystal. So no wonder it's akasha. It's like record keeper. It's our crystal. So is our teeth. Even the DNA, which many would say that is akasha, and I would agree with you, that's akasha, but it's unstable. Go and try read your DNA. Try. You're gonna go into mania. But you can read your spinal cord because the hyoid, which informed the creation of that akasha, is the only thing that's stable in the body. Remember the heart, right? The two H's, heart and hyoid. The heart, it's sucking, sucking, sucking. And this was initially very purposeful because what we're doing is we're accumulating and assembling materials from our mother to come into material. And so it's this vortex that is happening until the point of the hyoid, which is the stability. And then we begin to accumulate form, where the heart now, it's still working as a vortex and always will forever and ever. But now it has something that is neutralizing it, and that's the hyoid. And the hyoid informs the ivi kuamo'o, the spinal cord, to even exist. So we can even feel that the spinal cord has a kind of stability in a world of volatility, including the volatility of the human body. And part of the volatility of the human body is essential because just as much as you and I get to be locatable, we also get to be non-locatable. Non-locatable. That may be a totally different conversation when we come into Heka, Mu Hawaiian magic. But the necessity of being just as unlocatable as locatable. But that iwi kuo mo'o becomes our place of convergence and where it's locatable, which means it's locatable for you and I. We can now read that. That is a composite of cosmic history. And for many of us who experience amnesia, we come into this world, right? There's the glitch of amnesia. It's like, wait, what am I supposed to do here? Wait a minute. I think, no, I don't, what? Right? The iwi kuomo also holds the code of your kia kahi, as we say in the culture, or your purpose. We have a collective purpose. We believe it's love, sure. But we have individual purposes that will feed love. You and I will have very different translations of what love is, and it's our activity of that masculine, the activity of that, which will culminate to the completion of that purpose as well. So in our first month, it's kind of like just storytelling like I am now, yeah? Like, what's the story of ULU, right? Next week, we're going to journey through those three centers, the Unihipili, the Uhane, the Aumakua, because part of ULU is also activating the electrical voltage of these centers, which is going to be full disclosure. So of course it's like, well, what is what is that all about? Right? Yeah, let's get versed in what they represent, because if we're going into a place of full disclosure, like what are the codes of the feminine? What are the codes of the masculine? What are the codes of androgyny? And just remember the badass sophisticated, how it's doing a complete reversal. First, materialization. We're materializing, going all the way down to the feminine. In the process of spiritualization, we're doing the makdas, the huli hoi, the epic reversal. We're starting in the feminine. Establishment, belonging, autonomy. Autonomy means my right to exist. I could have generic conversations with so many other people, and they're all going to talk about what they need to do in order to belong and exist. Very rarely do I have conversations with people who begin their sentence, paragraph, whatever, with this is why I belong. Okay, those are my best friends. Hey, kapuhin ano ko ikalai. Right? But most of us, and this was me for a majority of my life, the talk was all about what I need to do to the point of fatigue and exhaust. Because it was never enough. It was never enough. My belonging was never enough. Feminine establishes belonging. That's why feminine governs safety. Safety means belonging. Many people get security mistaken with safety. Security, food, shelter, water, all of that, that's security. That's not safety. Safety is belonging. And the moment that you can reorient that responsibility back to your feminine, your life is going to change profoundly. Mine did. When I no longer sentenced my masculine to this thing called safety, my masculine was like, I have no idea what that is, but okay, I'll do it, I guess. Until I finally oriented and said, it's my feminine, govern safety. I now open myself up in consent to you blessing me with safety. And within an instant, it was miraculous. I experienced safety. And then my masculine can properly engage in, sure, security, the infrastructure of our lives. That may be food, shelter, water. And with the masculine, right, it's not just the bare minimum of food, shelter, water. It's food, shelter, and water of quality. Don't forget, you deserve quality, not just the bare minimum. And then when we come up to the holistic self, the aoma kua, right? These are in right relation, collaboration together within the holistic self, androgyny. And that will be next weekend. Sis and I will just guide you through like what do these centers mean. And then our second month together, we're going to focus solely on the unihipili, on the feminine, and introduce an ULU design, breathing and movement that can support the invigoration and the reemergence and awakening of that sacred 14. Our third month together will be an ULU design, breathing and movement for the uhane, for our masculine. Our fourth month together will be a breathing and movement design for our aumakua, the holistic self. And then our last month together will be decompression, integration. Okay, we're just going to be with one another for the decompression and integration. I want to come back to the question about the consideration of the hyoid. So, in Greek, it's called the upsilon, because it's shaped like a U. So one thing I want to make clear about the cervical vertebrae is that it's the sacred seven, but it also encompasses the brain glands and brain masses. And so that upsilon, right, that U, it's also a carrier. It's carrying all the glands, all the masses in the brain. We would consider those part of the Ivi Kuamo. Here's what I want to do. I'm going to invite you, if you have questions, things that are just arising for you, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm not going to be able to address all the questions today, right? But what I can do is I can read back, right? And I can address them by either posting responses on the website or in email. And this is anytime we meet. Anytime we meet, you have a question, you can just post it in the comments. And either I will address it when we are in ceremony together, or I will address it in the form of email or on the website. Because like I was sharing, there's not documentation of ULU. That was also just to like kuko, you and I, right? That was also another reason why I'm like, I don't want to do it. right? Like people are gonna think I'm crazy. People are gonna think I'm making shit up. Like all of this, right? And there's no documentation of it. And that also counteracted, right? Why I felt like it's so important for me to show up at this time and begin to share it and document it in a way. Um, I just see what Shimon is asking. Can you please clarify the three qualities of Ulu? Yes. So one, it's the materialization, right? That's the materialization. The other one is spiritualization, right, brother? But the third one is the akasha. I didn't make that very clear. So it's to materialize. So Ulu encourages our light being to acclimate itself into form. You know, the best example, I taught kindergarten for many years. And one of the things I loved about the 5-year-olds is that even when they're sitting, when they're standing, whatever they're doing, they're like this. They're acclimating into being in a body. It's fascinating how they allow themselves to do that. And then I'm reminded, as an adult, I'm still acclimating. How come we're preventing ourselves? Oh, you cannot. So weird. You are strange. But sometimes, bro, I want to be like, ha, ha, ha. Yeah, I'm in the line at Safeway. It's okay. Huh. Acclimating into being in form, it's so important for us. And Ulu allows us to begin to become fluent in what it means to just explore the regions of physicality. We can even feel it as we are distributing that light energy equally through our body, right? Fair distribution of the voltage of that light beingness in our physical body, which then, of course, begins to exude from us as what some call the aura. Now we have a proper aura. If people can't read your aura, it's likely because you're locked. You're locked. Once you loosen up, unlock, right? It also shows in your aura, right? The lineage of Sirius, what we call A'a in the Hawaiian culture, the quality is known as A and Na, or the shining ones. The shining ones. It's because it's a lineage that knows how to exude its aura, right? It's okay. The vibrancy, it's okay. And then that third part, right, would be the proper spiritualization. Materialization, akasha, spiritualization. We must also spiritualize. There's this phenomenon in Ulu, and we're going to talk about this in the ceremony, but it's called the Wat Et. Wat Et. And what's so cool about Wat Et, there's correlations to ancient Kem, ancient Egypt. They have, of course, the goddess Wajet, which is depicted as the serpent with coiling around a papyrus, right? Akasha, right? And what does the serpent commonly represent in all cultures in the world? Disclosure. Disclosure. You have the papyrus, right? Archives, you have disclosure. The freeing of the archives. Everyone deserves to know cosmic history. So we have the Wat Et, and the Wat Et is the oscillation that is running up and down the spinal cord. And remember, the brain masses and glands are considered part of the complex. So when it runs up and down, it's actually also in the brain glands. We have the pineal, pituitary, claustrum, vagus, medulla oblongata, thalamus, hypothalamus. Yeah, all of that. All of that. And they all hold an equation. It's so fascinating. The pituitary is feminine. It has that milky substance, right? And I believe in Christianity, they say milk and honey. Yeah. Milk is the pituitary. And I believe that it's the oxytocin. And the benzos, right? That's the pituitary, oxytocin, benzos. So feel into what does that provide for us? A sense of well-being. A sense of well-being. safety. If there's a chemical secretion of the feminine, it's oxytocin. It's the sense of well-being. And then we have the pineal, which is the melatonin. What does melatonin do? Rhythm. Rhythm. That's masculine. So now we're coming into a proper rhythm of life, rhythm of ourselves. The participation and engagement in a rhythmic world, the primary masculine in the Mu culture and Hawaiian culture is called pana. Pana literally means beat, to beat, rhythm. So when we are in ULU, in the design of ULU, what happens is there's a secretion that happens within the brain glands. The kulukurut, there's a secretion, it starts to drip down. When it passes through this mass called the claustrum, it infuses itself with the EV-VI, or the cerebral spinal fluid. Okay, that becomes this trinity fluid that then drips down every single vertebrae. As it drips down, feel it as it's activating. In order for that vertebrae to be activated, it needs to experience the drip. Drip, 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 all the way down to the coccyx, and then it is shot back up in the alaho, shot back up, and it continues with this behavior up and down. Now, when you're in a proper ulu, the oscillation is so fast going up and down the spinal cord that you can no longer see the actual movement. What's that called? That's called quantum. Now we're in quantum. Now that's where everything is going to open up. That's what we call the Wat-et. Wat-et alpha omega. The alpha omega is so rapid that all we see is the light. Now feel into, we're returning to origins once again. Now, here's one thing that I will address, and I know I'm going all over the place, but this is just, you and I just having a conversation. When we go into the actual instructional ceremonies, I'll be a lot more concise. But one thing about the what-et and why it's so important is you and I in a world of form, we're also in this fascination and interest of something known as linear. Linear. When you and I are in the what-et, by way of the repetition that is happening in Ulu. So Ulu, the movement and the breath, it's going to be repetitive, right? There is a repetition that's happening because what we're accomplishing in the repetition is we are allowing the linear to feel safe. Okay, you and I, as we function and engage throughout the day, the linear is in revolt. It's in revolt. It's always in revolt until you and I can apply a kind of repetition that allows the linear to feel safe. Once the linear feels safe, it will open itself up to quantum. That's what happens with the what-et and the rapid oscillation that is happening. Once we go into a repetition, the linear loosens its grip. It relaxes. Now we have access to quantum. Quantum is the record. Quantum is potential. But we must first cultivate a space where the linear is safe. Otherwise, it's not going to loosen its grip. Does that make sense to everyone? And I can't speak for Kundalini. I've never been a practitioner of Kundalini, but what I do see of Kundalini is that they do something similar. It's repetition over and over and over again for a long duration of time. And the timeline to which you are in a design is totally up to you. It's totally into the point where you reach that what-et. where you've penetrated the linear. And now you've accessed quantum because the linear trusts you. It feels safe. What is linear love? Patterns. So design a pattern, right? That's why I like, the success in my life and success in so many people's lives is because they're consistent, right? So many people, you wake up, you have an idea, you're like, oh, this is so great, you do it. And the next day you're like, it was too hard, or I'm bored now. Okay, you're inconsistent. You don't know how to design patterns, right? And so the linear is always going to be at battle with you until you can design a pattern. And if you can design a pattern with your body, brah, you're going to go into quantum. You're going to get access. You're going to have access because you allowed it. Is there anything you want to add or share to anything that's been shared thus far, sis?
I mean, like, where do you even begin, right? But for me, when you talk about the spine, I think of it as like the staff, right? The caduceus, and how as above, so below. So there's that connection. And the two serpents that go up, and when it hits the top, there's the meeting of both hemispheres. So on a physiological level, when Keone talks about quantum, on the physical level, it's we're illuminating through that sacred EVY and the oscillation and the buoyancy. We're illuminating both hemispheres from the structured mindset into the spiritual, and that fluid that is able to cultivate when we do it repetitively, the more you're connecting with the higher mind, the higher God's consciousness. So head, heaven, HEAVN is the head, and heel, HEL is hell, HELL, which is the lower mind. So what we're trying to do is bring our reptilian brain, that lower nature, up the 7 chakras or the 3 energy centers, changing these 7 vices into 7 virtues so that we can ascend. And that when we do come back, if we do choose to give consent to come back, we can come back with the memories so that we can be vessels of light to transmit that to the next generation, and so on and so forth. And so it's just so juicy. It's just so magical to be a part of it. And I see the spine as that staff. And so just think of it as like it's an anchor that can support you as you walk up Mount Meru to the top of the mountain. And it's going to be that thing that's going to allow you and guide you as you take each step. And each step is a memory, each step is a vibration and the frequency. And so for all of us to know that we may be in our infantry of learning this divine wisdom and ancient archaic knowledge, but it's already within us. So to know that the magic that is within us is ready to birth in our belonging because we showed up today. That is the belonging. The belonging is knowing that we chose to sign in today. And so all of us pulling in our staff into the iron crystal core, into the plasmic beings, into the inner waters, and bringing that up into us, we reach out through our heart chakra into our radiance and our magnetism, and we're all connected. And so I mahalo Keone for just being that pillar, right? For us to hold on to as we climb this mountain together, and to know that we're all powerful. Everyone has authority within their own kino, within their own heart to radiate. So awesome, brother. Mahalo nui.
Yeah, sis, mahalo, and so beautifully shared, sister. And Kofu Hitmano brings up something so important. I feel like personally for me is, I'm remembering alongside you. I don't pretend to be the authority of this. But right, I looked around, no one else is speaking up. I'm like, I'll do it. Right. And so you and I were remembering together. And thank you so much for your patience with me. There is no manual for me. My elders, my kupuna, never told me to share this, but they never told me not to share. I have nothing to reference other than my own Iwi Kuomo'o, the Oli Helu. And I'm so grateful to all of you for accommodating the space for me and for all of us to begin to just share what this is. But remember when I said about when this comes up in the Oli Helu, when Mahat drops this word ulu, it is simultaneously uttered with the word importance. Importance. And then I'm like fast forwarded, right, to like where we are now in this bifurcation, where we are being dazzled with the spoils and the comforts of a synthetic and holographic world. When I'm in pain and suffering, I want that. I want that holographic world. And there seems to be a tipping point where the collective is also saying, let's do that. Because all of this, there's too much pain and suffering. There's too much confusion. There's too much differences and contrast. But before we all make that collective decision to go into the synthetic and holographic world, perhaps you could resurrect and bring forth what you feel can be contributed to organic humanity. And I tell you what, friends, the moment you locate that holographic world, it's just not going to be interesting. It's not going to be interesting. I don't engage in things I don't find interesting, right? We still live in free will. It will always exist. That will always be a potential for us, but it's just not going to be interesting. And so it will not be the chosen thing. The organic and the preservation and perseverance of the organic until the point of spiritualization will be the selection for those of us who are organic. That's even rational. Right? We've materialized. Congratulations, congratulations, congratulations. The material. Whoa, whoa. Never before, never again. That's how significant this experiment is that we're all engaging in. Golden ticket status, like, congratulations. And then for us then to transfer that as spiritualization, oh, the elegance of it. But we can only spiritualize once we've accomplished the process and the experience of the materialization. And like I was sharing, that's one of the ways that I lose people, because I get straight to it, right? When I talk about ULU, I'm like, I gotta get to this, the trigger point, right? About honoring the material, right? And then people say, oh, you're, encouraging like the 3D, any of that. I'm not encouraging the 3D, I'm honoring it. Does it not exist? So it's purposeful. Let's honor it and complete it, right? And then we can expand ourselves into whatever we get to expand as once there is a proper completion. And so simultaneously with the design and the movement of ULU, we will also be sharing with you what we call Hoi. And the third ceremony, so another 2 weekends from now, Kapua Hinano and I will be sharing with you the actual Hoi, or the incantations, the utterances, the vocalization, the noise. Okay, because we can feel that that's what thunders through our body. We have a nervous system, we have molecules and cells. It's what activates everything, lights it up with the Hoi, the incantation. And so we'll share that. That will ready us for the actual movement. And I noticed in one of the comments, what if you have some sort of spinal injury? What if you have some sort of disability that you cannot move your spinal cord? You don't need to move your spinal cord. If you can apply attention and focus on your vertebrae, you're good. That's all. And so in the process of these 5 months together, we're not only going to be asking you to favor the movement and the flexibility of your spinal cord, we're also going to remind you how to focus on these vertebrae. Because when you can focus on the vertebrae, that in itself is an activation. You don't necessarily need it to actually move. That will incite the drip, right? You can have any disability of the spinal cord and there will still be a drip, okay? So every limitation that you feel that is attempting to sabotage you, at this moment, because that's real, right? The sabotage is going to come. Begin to negotiate with it. And if you need support in negotiating with the sabotage, let me know. Not a problem, right? I'll support you in what you can bring forth to that negotiation. So you're no longer governed by sabotage. I feel like I don't want to go any further because today's just been so much data. And I just am going to invite everyone to just absorb all the data and allow that to just trickle in where it needs to trickle in, what it needs to activate, get to activate. Before I do that, before I complete today's ceremony, a couple things. Kapuohi nano kauikalai. Is there any pressing questions that you feel could be addressed at this time?
There was one where it was talking about what is the actual meaning or name of Ulu? Why was that name chosen? And then they have this whole relation to the breadfruit, but what's the opposing side to that, or the differentiation?
Yeah, good question. So Ulu, what we know, and I should correct myself and say what I know, because it has a mysterious origin. It just shows up right in the Olihelu. Like the word literally Ulu, the sound Ulu just shows up. What Ulu does mean, literally, it means to enter and to inspire, to inhabit as a phenomenal force. That's what it literally means. And so we can feel like that process of our light beings come into the world of form and material, right? We are entering and we are becoming inspired. Okay? I want to say that again. If that's a protocol, I've entered and I'm inspired. I'm not entered and I'm burdened. Right? That's what my kupuna would say. They say, boy, if you wake up in the morning thinking all of this is a burden, go back to sleep, try again. I'm entered and I'm inspired. That's what Ulu literally means. The other definition of Ulu that comes up even in modern times today is to inhabit or inhibit as a phenomenal force. Once again, the light being, right? The light being coming into this form now and being able to express itself. And ultimately, one of the greatest things that you and I get to do as form is, the energy that some call God. In the culture, we may say things like Kame'anana Ihana. Sometimes it's the name which cannot be spoken, right? And mainly not because it's taboo, but because how can you put a word to that energy of God? But what you and I get to do, because that energy, guess what? It doesn't have form. We have form, which means we get to express what that energy looks like, sounds like, tastes like, feels like. Wow. Wow. You ever thought about that? That's pretty significant that this energy that does not have form, but we have form, we get to translate what it looks like, sounds like, tastes like, feels like. And then there is a relation to the breadfruit, which is also called ulu. We believe that ulu was named after the actual art of ulu, because the fruit is the first carbohydrate in all of Hawaii, or what we would say the first life-sustaining edible food in Hawaii. The first food that occupies the physical body as nutrition. And so ulu was named after the artistry of ulu. Anything else? Kapuhi no kauikalai.
I'm over here writing notes. I'm like, oh, this is so good. No, yeah, I think there's a lot of different questions on will it be transcribed or will there be captions moving forward, so that some people who have hard of hearing, will this be something that they can access?
So, of course, all these will be published in our members portal as replays. And then there's another section in the members portal that says ULU Design Headquarters. And what that is purpose for is that it's going to be a written recap of what happens in each ceremony. And this will be especially helpful when we go into actual designs because, you don't have to watch an entire ceremony to become reintroduced to the actual design. I'll give you written instructions as well. So there's also that section in the members portal. It's called ULU Design Headquarters, and it will be a written instructional of what we cover in the ceremonies. But of course, it's always fun to watch the replays. Even, I'm an avid runner, you guys. And a lot of the times I will integrate data and information on my run. Got my earbud, and then we'll just listen. That could be really supportive because sometimes, right, especially when there's a data dump, right, some things aren't landing that maybe could land, right? And so re-listening to something could really like, oh, so that. All right. And also, like I shared, I will read back these comments. And if there are any questions that I see a theme coming up that needs to be addressed, I will definitely address them in an email or in that ULU headquarters. I'll say these are the questions that came up most commonly in our ceremony, and I will address them here. Okay. And of course, our amazing Ikemanu, who chanted us in honor of Ulu Kameanui. I would love to invite you back, Kumu, so that you could share a prayer or a chant or any way to which you feel that we can complete this maiden voyage today.
Thank you for giving me that opportunity. Yeah. So Ulu means to grow, to increase, to spread. I said it in the chat room as well. And I think that's really important. It's a symbol of resilience, preservation, and security. So with all your life, everything is that. That is Ulu. That is the definition of Ulu. And that's very important for us to realize how important this ulu is, yeah? Because our kupuna always taught us spread, spread, grow, go out. Our parents always says, no, go, learn by your mistakes, do it. And I've always told my friends, whatever you do is what you do. And I think that's really important for all of us um to realize anyway. So yeah. So I want to end with this other chant. It's an Ulu chant as well. And I believe Keone, I did this one time and you kept the recording. And it's that E ulu kini o ke kua, yeah. So that was such a really beautiful chant, and how you integrated another chanter and me into the mix. I thought that was like, holy hell. And I have to tell you, people, when Hawaiians chanting, what's missing today, what's really missing today is when a person is chanting, there's no answer back. Everybody's like so proper and they wait and for me, that is, I get more excited when another chanter comes right in and chants along with me, another chant. So in essence, you have two chanters doing two different chants, but it's all the same. It's all the same. It's that connection. This is the connection. Yeah. So today in chanting, we're like this, but I really like when a chanter comes in and then we're like this. So I want to end with that chant. E ulu. E ulu kini o ke kua ulua e o kanea ke na loa. Ulu ka ohia a lau ka vai ka e e. Ulu a eke kua a noho I kono kau. E ia ka vai ka awa. He vai ola. He ola I au I ke kumu. E ola I ka po'opua. E ola I ka pai pai. E ulu I ka nahaumana au pau. Ele ele kapu ele ele noa. Increase your knowledge. Multiple of the gods. Inspire us. Kane, kanaloa. Grow and nourish us like the ohia, a leaf. And the inspiration of the guardians to stay and preserve. Here is the water. The ceremony Ava. Give life to the source. Give life to the leader. Give life to the hula assistant. Give life to all students. Profound the kapu. Profound its lifting. So let's lift. The kapu is done. So Keoni has actually led us into this learning about Ulu. So what he's done is he's opening the portal for all of us. Yeah. So that's why in the last line it says profound the kapu. So when we got together today, there was a kapu. There was a kapu. No one could understand, no one was like, okay, we're coming together in this really beautiful setting, and now the kapu has lifted. Yeah. And the answer is Keoni and Kapua Hinano. That's the answer. Those are the pinnacles of this Ulu session, and really looking forward to all of you spending more time with Keoni and Kapua Hinano, because they have the Ike. They have the Ike. I have the Ike as well, but my Ike is deeper. It's very Hawaiian. It's deep, 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 deep. Thank you, everyone. I really love you. Aloha ma, everybody.
Aloha man. One way that I describe my relationship with you, Kumu, is you ground me, and it's the depths that you just spoke of. You have such a connection to the depths that it truly does ground me. I'm so grateful to you. I'm so grateful to Kapua Hinano Kauikala'i, and so grateful to all of you, right? And the lineage of your current moment and who you are that is now called forth. I want to remind every single one of you that you can be the contemporary leader of a lineage right now, just like Mahat was, right? Your lineage can begin right now with you, and for you to become empowered in such a way. And then by way of Ulu and what we could support you in rediscovering, I think will be paradigm shifting for you, of course, individually, but then how you come forth and make contributions to this collective as well. Mahalo. I love you all completely. Next weekend, we will talk about the energy centers and what exactly we are looking to activate when we go into the design of Ulu. So next weekend, all about the 3 energy centers. Looking forward to seeing you then. And I feel like, I have a protocol, right, in every ceremony that I facilitate. Um, Oftentimes we have community sharing, but it's so important for me to have the voice of everyone. And so when we sign out, I ask everyone to unmute yourself and we all utter the same thing, and we do it over and over and over again until everyone signs out. And for today, I'm sure it's no mystery, but the word that I would love for us to all honor together is Ulu. If we could all unmute ourselves and repeat over and over again until we sign out. Ulu.
Ulu,
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 Ulu.
ulu,
ulu,
Ulu.
ulu, ulu,
Ulu.
ulu, 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 ulu,
Aloha, vau yo oe, pao ole. I love you completely. Aloha ma.